Welcome into another episode of the Young Terps podcast. Ahmed Gafir and Mason Viner. Ahmed, let's get right to it. Let's go inside the bag. Terps hot on the trail, and they have their first portal commit.
Yeah, and it was a big one for Maryland, picking up former Bowling Green cornerback Jalen Husky, 6 foot, 185-pound cornerback who completed his high school career over at Quince Orchard. On3 had him rated as the fourth best cornerback in the transfer portal. I believe I saw another outlet had him as the second best, but really a guy that as soon as he went into the portal, I texted a couple people and I even posted on the site that I kind of expect Maryland to kind of be involved here. And sure enough, Maryland was immediately doing their homework. Maryland, Oklahoma, I believe Kentucky was that third school that was kind of in the mix for him. But frankly, Maryland was the first school that he wanted to take an official visit to. And if all checked out, multiple people told me that he didn't have a reason to check out any other schools. And sure enough, got a chance to talk to him on Sunday afternoon. The visit went great, checked off all the boxes, and a couple hours later, went public with his pledge. So losing Tarheeb Still, Jaquan Shepard, following the 2023 season. Husky definitely has a chance to come in, be that impact cornerback, and definitely a big portal commitment, and might end up going down as one of the bigger additions this offseason.
Yeah, definitely the biggest, if you look at it from the defensive side of the ball, definitely the biggest position of need for the Terps, along with the offensive line. Adding a first-team All-MAC player, and then Ahmed seeing a guy that graduated Quince Orchard commit back to the Terps, obviously a lot of positives for Loxley and company.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I think just getting the local guys back home, and I think it's also just kind of interesting. I think 2 years ago, it was kind of um, warranted. Whether or not he kind of shown that he was able to make that Power Five jump, but there was no doubt that if you were around Moco football, you heard about Jalen Husky, about what he was able to do, about just his impact. And again, I just kind of think in those 2 years, he's been able to show that at Bowling Green, obviously coming off that 2023 season. So again, it's all about, I feel like every single time there's a local kid that goes into the portal, whether he looked at Maryland or not, at least one person will send it over to me and say, hey, is he Maryland bound? And I'll always say, it's about Maryland taking the right guys. The guys that want to be home for the right reasons, not because Maryland is, oh hey, I still want to stay Power Five. I think again, this was a kind of a perfect match, and like you said, doing it with the QO guy. I don't think that there's really much of a post Chop Robinson like hangover or anything like that. I think that's kind of that's been settled, but definitely to add a QO guy, a Moco guy, a local guy, and a guy that I expect to be an impact guy over these last 2 years. Bodes well, just like Gotti Edzi, Donnell Brown, Corey Bullock, all those guys, Caden Prather, all local guys who joined the program through the transfer portal and played pivotal roles.
Yeah, and the Terps definitely need some pivotal role type help at corner. They also pick up another safety from St. John's.
Yeah, Shamar McIntosh, he was a guy that kind of through the fall, it seemed like ever since he visited for that Virginia game, Maryland was going to kind of eventually be the school for him. Had the Temple involved as well. He took an official visit there the first weekend of December. But Maryland was really the kind of the school that led kind of throughout the main Power Five school that was in contact with him. And I remember talking to a source right after he visited for the Virginia game, and they mentioned, he's a locks type of guy. And I thought it was really interesting that, even Maryland was telling him, hey, see number 13, that safety, Glenn Miller, that's kind of the comp that we see you fitting into the secondary as, because when you watch McIntosh, that's exactly the way he plays, I think, as well. So Jalen Husky, I don't think I mentioned, he'll enroll in in January. McIntosh will enroll in June. But definitely, I think Husky's more of a guy where you expect him to be an immediate impact. I think McIntosh, just kind of also with the way the safety room is set up a little bit with Dante Trader Jr. and Glenn Miller expected to lead the room again. I think McIntosh is able to kind of step in and maybe have a year or two, but filling in that second safety role alongside four-star safety Brandon Jacob in the 2024 class was one of the not a top priority, but a priority to close out the cycle.
Yeah, the Terps certainly finding a player that plays the style that we've come accustomed to at safety, and possibly another one of those tandems coming up with Jacob and McIntosh at that spot. One guy that's hard hitting, another guy that flies around the field, makes plays. I mean, the position that you got to start developing. You got to get guys in the system. That's what we saw with Glenn Miller. That's why I think they're so comfortable with him stepping up. The Terps adding one of those pieces, and hey, with the guys hitting the portal, there's always an opportunity that could be popping up.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's also pretty interesting. Like I remember having a conversation with Fahim Delaney in August, and just kind of just asking him, "Hey, what kind of your thoughts about Maryland?" And obviously he's a DB, and he was bringing up, "Hey, I've taken notice of Maryland producing a couple cornerbacks in the NFL, and they'll be able to potentially add two more this year. We'll kind of see where's our heap still. Jaquan Shepard are kind of slotted where they end up landing in April, but I think Maryland also kind of being able to do that kind of helps bolster their claim a little bit.
Yeah, and lots of other names to get to. Ahmed, what are the Terps looking at in the portal right now?
Yeah, it was definitely a busy weekend. Former Indiana center Zach Carpenter was on campus as well. He was a guy that sounds like things went pretty well with him. Former Florida State offensive lineman Quayshawn Sapp got a chance to get hosted by his former college teammate Quayshawn Fuller throughout the weekend. Drake Dabney, he was probably going to be one of the top transfer portal tight ends. He's probably right up there along Corey Dyches, ironically. But he was also able to make his way to campus alongside his parents as well. So we're going to see on that. I think those are kind of some of the newer names once they kind of entered the portal this last week. But obviously the offensive line, Zach Carpenter, definitely a big priority. Especially with that center spot being wide open. And then obviously MJ Morris, the NC State quarterback, took his official visit starting on Thursday, left campus on Saturday. Sounds like there's a lot of confidence that Maryland is in a good spot with him. Has 3 years of eligibility left and is able to enroll in January. So I think there was a lot of a chance that you get a chance to see a lot of quarterbacks start to fall beginning on Monday. Kind of had my MJ Morris commitment watch beginning today, so we'll kind of see what shakes out the rest of the week. But I feel pretty good about where Maryland stands there.
Yeah, over on the high school trail, Ahmed, the Terps. So with a couple guys you have hot over on the board on inside the blackandgold.net, starting off with another offensive lineman, Logan Bennett from St. Francis.
Yeah, I mentioned him. It's every time he's come up. He's a guy that first jumped out junior year, and it seemed like ever since it seemed like once Michigan State, once I wouldn't say the dust really settled, but once it became pretty apparent that there was going to be some pretty major shakeups. Bennett kept his mind open a lot more, was open a lot more visits. Maryland stayed in contact kind of throughout, but once he visited for the Penn State game, I thought Maryland was really in a great spot with him. Was able to make his way to campus this past weekend for his official visit, whole family alongside him. So still feel great about him. We'll see what comes into the next couple days as well. And Flowers cornerback Braden Lee, he's another obviously top target there. Got a chance to make his way to campus, and he spoke very glowingly, and he was pretty open with me. This weekend wasn't as much about him as more it was for his mom to get a chance to sit down with the coaching staff, sit down with Loxley, sit down with Baker. Baker obviously being a huge driving force in this recruitment. So I think Maryland's doing well. Obviously he mentioned South Carolina will be in home for him on Tuesday. Maryland should be in there afterwards as well. So Maryland's been doing a really, really good job with him, staying hot throughout the fall, and obviously with about 7, 8 days left until signing day, I think Maryland has a great shot at flipping him. So we'll kind of see how the dust settles there. I'd say probably the wild card coming out of the weekend is Bishop McNamara, defensive end, Lugard Edopai. He's a guy that Maryland kind of had to surge for late. Maryland made the top 5 for him, but a couple of times, even when Maryland was kind of showing interest, the contact wasn't always there. Minnesota was a school that jumped in early, but doesn't seem like they're a serious contender down the stretch. Rutgers hosted him for an official visit, and Maryland was kind of able to capitalize on his official visit plans this past weekend. Originally scheduled to visit Texas A&M, but obviously with Mike Elko there taking over with that coaching change, those the two sides kind of parted ways there, and Maryland was kind of able to kind of, like I said, just kind of capitalize, take advantage. So we'll see. I'm not sure that Maryland is able to really turn the tide. I think he hits Michigan and then Florida State to close out this week, and then but those schools have done a good job once they hit the mix. They were hard on him. Tennessee was a school that was trying to get into the mix as well. So I think again, I think wild card is a pretty accurate label to kind of get to. So those are kind of the priority names to keep tabs on coming out of this past weekend, and then to look ahead to next weekend, signing day. Obviously, linebacker Jeremiah Marcellin, kind of 1A, 1B with Braden Lee there in terms of top flip targets. And then you have four-star defensive lineman Ernest Wallor. He should be taking his official visit this upcoming weekend with Wisconsin, the other contender. Defensive lineman Cam Jones, another local guy from St. Mary Riken there, as well as JUCO lineman Quay McBroom. So should be another big portal weekend as well. So expect a busy next 8 9 days for Maryland.
Yeah, if Maryland somehow finds a way to pick up Derek Queen and Willar in the next coming months, so it'll be two absolutely strange recruitments that Maryland certainly has a shot in as they both come down the line.
Yeah, I would say Willor is probably one of the weirder recruitments that I've kind of covered over this stretch. But just overall, I think just the buzz really coming out this weekend felt like Maryland did a really good job, kind of hit it out the park with really a lot of these guys. So I think Maryland has a chance to really generate some momentum over these next couple of days. I think the wild card, obviously, I didn't mention his name, is Jordan Seaton, who pulled the trigger on Colorado last week. But we'll see what happens. Again, for me, he needs to step on campus for me to kind of believe the hype right now. But again, Maryland's been in the mix for him for I've said it multiple times, but it's been a 4 year pursuit there. So I'm sure when Loxley heard Seaton talk about why not play for a guy that looks like you, he raised an eyebrow a little bit. So we'll see what the next 8 days look like.
We sure will as that early signing period opens uh, 8 days from now. On the rest of the football side, Terps push back Bowl Media Day with the Music City Bowl coming up to next Tuesday, December 19th. Ahmed and myself will have all your coverage for that on InsideTheBlackAndGold.net. The Terps also see two portal entries today. Riyad Wilmot and Ramon Brown enter the portal. Ahmed Wilmot gives the Terps 4 years. Ramon Brown, sort of, you almost had to figure somebody in that running back room was going to depart.
Yeah, and again, it just felt like with Ramon Brown, I think that's obviously the big name there. And again, it just felt like a logjam. Nolan Ray behind him, Dewan Williams coming in there. So I think not saying either of those guys I expected to really take reps from Ramon Brown, but Ramon Brown this year, battled injuries among some other things, and that kind of limited him a little bit there, and showed signs as a freshman. I think had a lot of hope, had a lot of promise, but it was just kind of something kind of had to give in that running back room. I was really interested to see whether it was going to be after this offseason or after spring ball, but I definitely expected some attrition, and Ramon Brown it was kind of one of those guys that I expected or kind of had my eyes on. So nothing really more to it there. I think just kind of just nature of college football and just the way the position kind of stacked up. But Riyad Wilmot, I think, is kind of a guy that over the last 2 years, I think, especially this 23 season, has kind of been able to show himself as a rotational piece. But I think Maryland has some pieces coming back. Obviously, Denell Brown expected back, Kellen White expected back outside. So Neo Avery, as well. I know he's been sidelined through the regular season. I think there's a chance we see him for the bowl game, but we'll see again. We'll be on campus for full practice next Tuesday. We'll have plenty more there, but again, that should be a piece that you get a chance to see some of these younger guys, maybe DJ Samuels, take advantage in the bowl game.
Yes, certainly will be a lot of opportunities out there. Loxley is going to play a lot of guys in that Music City Bowl. Wilmot definitely got a shot this year to flash. You said it. He showed as a rotational piece, strong against the run, battled a little bit of injury throughout Big Ten play. But ultimately, I think Loxley is looking for Donnell Brown, looking for Kellen Wyatt to really take over, because one thing that they can do that Wilmot was weak at is rush the passer. That's something that this team's going to really need to find. Obviously, they lost one guy, Jashawn Barham, that showed the ability to do that, but they're going to be looking for Neo Avery, for Dylan Gooden, for some of these guys they brought in now to step up that can show the complete package as far as that Jack or Sam linebacker spots go, where they really have got to find a way to get to the quarterback if they want to be really successful in the next level and take that defense to where it definitely can get to, but has shown flashes of.
Yeah, and again, I think the front seven just kind of as a whole going into next year. I mentioned it for subscribers. You look at the defensive line. You have Tommy A, Tyze Johnson, Quayshawn Fuller, Jordan Phillips, all these guys expected back once more. But you're looking at kind of retooling. That 2 years ago Henry Jabuzzi, this past year Trey Colbert. Finding that plug and play guys. So I think But just the front seven as a whole, kind of Maryland is in a good spot. I just don't expect Maryland to really, outside of in that finding that Trey Colbert replacement. Not sure that I see Maryland really moving the needle there. But like you mentioned, I think some of these younger guys, Neo Avery, I think everybody that is familiar with what Neo's been able to show as a pass rusher, um, that provides a lot of depth there. I think it'll be really interesting to see how it shakes out next year between him, Kellen White, Donnell Brown, and just kind of how all three of them are used, or whether Kellen White's has his hands in the dirt there in the trenches there. So it'll be really interesting. But again, I think Maryland's in a good spot. Riyad Wilmot had been able to show flashes, but again, 1 sack, 12 tackles, 10 games. I think Maryland will be able to find that production elsewhere.
Yeah, you just scratched the surface. I mean, you could even dig it down another level. Levon Johnson, Dylan Fontes, DJ Samuels. Like, there's a lot of talent that Maryland has kind of filled that gap from that huge class they took of mostly local guys that departed fairly quickly after. And now I think you're seeing come what it's like unbelievable to say what will be year 6 of Mike Loxley. You'll start to see some of those depth pieces and being able to show a complete front seven, something that I think fans and people that just watch this program have chased for years, to have more than 4 guys that actually belong out there in Big Ten play. But next year there's a lot of hope for that, but still plenty of time between the portal, spring ball, injury. I mean, it's Maryland. Somehow, some way, there may be some change there.
Yeah, and again, I think I've talked about this with the portal. It's not always as much as oh, what is everyone thinking after the season? Of course, you have your player meetings and players leave and things like that. The half of the battle sometimes is figuring out which guys are staying, obviously, but then when you add a guy, or what's the is there a domino impact? What's the is are other guys thinking about leaving? So it's constant. But again, think it's I've tried to every time I talk about the roster certainties and all that stuff, I try and say as of now or as of Sunday night, because and that stuff is fluid. But as of now, I think there's a lot to like. I think if Maryland's able to find another cornerback, a guy maybe similar to Jalen Husky, this defense looking pretty good.
Yeah, it definitely has that potential. And now, I mean, Ahmed, you just said it. There's all the selling points you need for your like Trey Colbert replacement, your corner potential nickelback. I mean, whatever they want to bring in to this, they can start selling. We're legitimately one guy away. I mean, you turn on the film, most of those guys are returning. Look, you lose your defensive MVP, or I guess not Hippolyte ends up with that MVP, but you lose one of your end of season award winners of Bo Braid, who's a clear guy that's going to the league. Again, another selling point to a defensive back is just what this program's been able to do as far as putting guys on the NFL radar. And Dante Trader is another one of those guys that's coming back next year that you can use to sell that point even further. The support you're going to get from the safeties as a defensive back.
Yeah, I mean I agree. Again, I think the conversation now is just it's different, and you mentioned it, in terms of like players and things like that. I point back to just Maryland as a whole. You looked these last 2 years, their performances against the big dogs and whatnot. I know we talked about it, but just they're plays away at this point. So Maryland can still go to the portal and say, hey, like. We're 7 plays away. We're 7 plays away from beating, from having different fate against Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, for example. You're the guy that can make the difference for X, Y, and Z reasons. And again, Maryland's done a really good job coming out of this weekend. There's a lot of good coaches on here, but they do a good job recruiting, and I think a lot of these guys kind of been able to see that. So all about finding the right guys. But again, I think there's a lot to figure out kind of where that settles. But again, defense. I think if you're able to find that second corner, I think that just the defense as a whole looks really good. But just right now, a lot of experienced pieces that you look at, and you look at going into 2023. Brian Williams touched on it. He benefited from him going into year 2 of his scheme, his defense, and granted, he's been here for year 5 now. But for guys to kind of know what to expect, have those transfers come in, kind of be the kind of the leader for the next wave of guys. I think that kind of helps kind of maintain what to expect on the defensive side of the ball. So again, I think a lot to like, but chance that Maryland adds on the offensive side. So like I said a couple of times, it'll be interesting to see how the next 8 days unfold.
It sure will.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see how the next week unfolds.
Yeah, forget that extra day. I mean, the extra day is Loxley's day, though, that first day of
I
that signing
I
period. So,
I have like 7, 8 articles in drafts right now, and we'll see how many I have by Friday.
yeah, it's that time of year.
Yeah.
It's coming down to the wire, and Maryland's always going to make moves at the end. Everybody knows that. So, it's probably one article that you don't have in the drafts that'll just appear out of nowhere.
Yeah, probably, and that's what we like to call anxiety.
Yeah, it is. Or some random 5-star, 4-star running back with a hot air balloon committing to a team that no
Yeah,
one knows
man,
he's going to
that
commit to.
that space commitment, that will forever just blow my mind. That was weird. That was
Did that
weird.
guy do anything? Did he ever make it anywhere?
He went to UCF, and I think he played against for UCF. I think he played against Maryland actually, but I don't know if he did anything or if he became the latest victim of the transfer portal.
Yeah, who knows?
But we'll see. It'll be an interesting one.
Flipping it over to basketball, Terps pick up their first Big Ten win of the season last week, a 81-75 overtime win over Penn State. Ahmed, Terps fall behind early, shooting woes come back, but ultimately Jameer Young and Juju Reese carry Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of figure that Maryland at home. You kind of assume that Maryland's going to eventually kind of figure it out, get it together, and do enough. But man, they just do not make it easy on themselves. Obviously, he led by Julian Reese, Jameer Young there, and Jameer Young there to finish with 44 minutes in the end. When day before, Kevin Willard mentioned, he's questionable, hadn't practiced all week because of an ankle injury. Ended up going halfway through practice that Tuesday, so gutsy performance by him, but. Not a surprise, Julian Reese, Jameer Young lead the way. Jamie Kaiser is the third person to finish in double figures, but just not much production. Poor shooting from three. But I think what stuck out was Maryland's dominance on the board, despite going against Kudus Wahad.
Yeah, that's just such a blast from the past. What is that? Is that his fourth or third school of his college career?
I
Another
think,
guy, constant victim of the transfer portal.
yeah, I think this well, it's technically his third, but fourth move because he went Georgetown, Maryland, Georgetown, Penn State.
So yeah, that says it all. He picks up
Wild.
5 fouls in the second half,
Yeah,
nonetheless, against Maryland.
that was something, man. I honestly, you got to be. I don't know how many times you've really seen that. I mean, he played. Yeah, he played 12 minutes. How do you pick up 5,000 12 minutes in the second half? That's got to be some type of record. But
Only Demonte Dodd and Kudus Wahab. If you
yeah,
don't notice, if you listen to the show a lot, I do love the Demonte Dodd stat line of like 4 fouls, 8 rebounds, 0 points, and then like 0 for 4 from the free throw line.
but it's funny because first half he played well. You kind of looked assertive. He looked fluid at times. I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was rooting for him. I was like, damn, good for you, Q.
Yeah, I was saying that too. I was like, you know what? This guy's actually averaging close to double digits a
Yeah,
game, picking up rebounds, getting a lot of minutes. I'm going to assume he's going to find some opportunity to play professional basketball somewhere on this planet next year. I just can't imagine him not finding that as he's developed somewhat
yeah.
of an offensive game. So, but I don't really know what there is to say about this team at this point. They're last in the conference in the net rankings going into this point. They have 2 games coming up in the next couple of days against teams that are just really, really bad basketball teams before that trip to UCLA. And look, you said it, at home, they seem to find a way to figure it out. On the road, they don't. And the same things continue. They can't shoot the three. Their field goal percentage overall is just worsening game after game. They're not a great free throw shooting team, especially on the road. So it's hard to win games when you can't really score that many points.
Yeah, and again, really, really, the only things that I can kind of take away are the shootings over these next 2 games, because again, you kind of it's an overmatched opponent. Inside, you kind of expect Juju Reese to do what he does, Jameer Young to be able to feast. But again, yeah, like you said, just the poor shooting. I think that's just an overall concern. 16 turnovers again against Penn State. A lot of the stat lines just feel very similar game in game out. Which again, I think that's kind of credit to the rebounding margin. Maryland being able to control the glass the way it did, finishing with what was it, 23? Yeah, 23 offensive rebounds there. So I think that's something that to kind of hang your hat on. And Willer touched on a post game, having Dante Scott at the three, Jordan Geronimo at the four, and then Juju at the five. Obviously, that's rebounding, a good rebounding lineup there. So it's kind of what you expect to kind of have that success, be able to control the paint like that is kind of I guess the key to victory. But there's just until Maryland can show that they can shoot or pose any type of threat outside the paint, it's tough to feel optimistic on this team.
It is a couple of positives. I think Jamie Kaiser Jr. looks a lot more comfortable out there on the court. He reaches double digits at the end of the game. I think Deshaun Harris Smith sort of not his best game at all, but late in the game showed the ability to just drive the basket really hard and force some fouls. So again, positives where you can find them right now for this team is on the offensive side of the floor. One thing that I got to point out is, some of just the boneheaded plays that Maryland makes there. Most notably, Jahari Long's foul at the end of regulation. You just don't need to commit a full blown pass interference call and with no time left on the clock and foul a guy before he even touches the ball. Late turnovers, also poor free throw shooting. Just those plays are always going to get the fans riled up. But I think you know you can't do that. I don't really know what the guy is thinking in that situation. I feel that that's just kind of a sign of the season at this point.
Yeah, I agree. When that happened, it was just kind of like the "come on, man" moment. Honestly, that's kind of what it felt like, and kind of made you wonder if Maryland kind of lost all momentum, lost the air out of that in them going into overtime. But I think Willard touched on it. I think losing Q once he fouled out, I thought that kind of helped shift the tide there. But yeah, just goes back to Maryland just not making it easy on themselves and unfortunately, good teams don't make those types of plays. Maryland just has not shown that it can be a good team yet, which is why it's really tough to move the needle until the UCLA game. And granted, that UCLA game right now is looking like a quad two game, but when all said and done, probably ends up being quad one. But again, Maryland has to prove it at this point.
Yeah, they do, and that UCLA game step one, and then obviously the Big Ten, which is not looking strong at all, which plays in the opposite of Maryland's favor
Yeah,
at this point. Um, you got to be thinking 12, 13 wins has to be that number for Maryland, just given those two losses, which I think will haunt this team the entire season. The UAB and the Davidson loss are not necessarily good. Davidson's looking a little bit better than UAB, and both teams look better than expected at the beginning of the season. But ultimately, a mid-tier AAC team and a mid-tier A10 team's neutral site losses are
yeah,
not good.
yeah. I mean, being 0-4 in quad one and quad two games, going into mid December. I mean, you're probably looking at Maryland has to finish top five in the Big Ten, right? I mean, because top five, and that's probably where 12, 13. I mean, that's
Yeah,
probably where that gets you.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
you would think six
Maryland's
at
gonna have to get
worst.
hot. I mean, they don't have a resume. I mean, yeah, it's like right now. I mean, you can't even. They're not even like in bubble talk right now. Yeah,
No,
they're gonna have to really peak when the calendar turns to Jan 1, and they'll have a great opportunity to because it's Purdue right there.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, if you look at the league, and it might be a little bit early for this conversation, they need the win against Purdue. I think that's almost a
That's a must
non-negotiable.
win.
It being potentially at points during the conference season the only ranked Big Ten team.
Yeah,
That's a realistic thought process at this point, especially with Ohio State's loss at Penn State, who was the second worst net ranking team in the conference. Ahmed had an article about that on Inside the Black and Gold earlier today. So they're kind of out of it. They were starting to get some chatter, top 25, much improved team, most improved coaching job in the country. But then they dropped that game where they had, I think it was like an 18-point lead that they blew at Bryce Jordan over
yeah,
the weekend. Iowa's not looking good right now. All those like mid-tier conference teams that had Indiana hasn't done much outside the conference, and Maryland's already lost that opportunity. you just start to look at kind of what's left for you, and it's just not there.
Yeah,
Really
no.
isn't.
Yeah, and Juwan Howard still fighting allegations that he's striking assistants and strength trainers. I mean, yeah, all's go looking good in Ann Arbor, and Michigan State's not looking good either. I mean, yeah, it's not looking good for the Big Ten. So yeah, I don't think it's a stretch at all to say, hell, I'll call the UCLA and Purdue games. I mean, both of those are must win games. Um, I mean, I really think that if Maryland has another performance. Um, Against UCLA like it did against Villanova, for example, you're losing a little bit of that fan base. Like it's going to take a Purdue win to kind of get some people back in. So we'll see. But again, I think just for Maryland to be able to get back in the win column against Penn State, think that's just kind of big. But we'll see. Chance to move to 6-4 starting at 7 o'clock on Tuesday night against Alcorn State, and then they got Nickel State and former assistant Tevon Sadler coming back to College Park.
Yeah, I'll throw one thing out to wrap up the basketball part. Generally, if you're talking about must wins for the tournament on December 11th of the prior year of that NCAA tournament, you're probably not in a good spot to be making it.
Yeah,
I'll have to say that. That's just a matter of fact. If it's not like February and we're talking about, hey, we need a big road win. If it's December and you're saying that, you're in a bad spot, and you know it. And I think we all do.
yeah.
It's just, yeah, not what was expected at all from this team.
No, no, not at all, not at all. I think I firmly believe that and not to say that it's a blame per se, but I think that this falls on expecting more and not getting enough from the two freshmen. That's what it is. And Dante Scott just struggling to kind of acclimate and whatnot. So that's kind of why you kind of have some hope and some optimism that maybe things kind of do turn around and you kind of do hit that stride. But like you said, Mason, I had to stop myself short of admitting that I was googling NIT bracketology earlier for that article. So for that, I apologize.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll leave it at NIT bracketology. Again, December 11th, talking about bracketology, probably not something that you want to spend too much time on. But hey, I think that just shows how much the two of us cover these teams and do our research before doing the pod. As Ahmed said, next 8 days, it's prime Mike Loxley season. It's prime Maryland football season. Ahmed, of course, has all of the VIP info over on InsideTheBlackAndGold.net. Make sure to subscribe to it. Ahmed, anything else to add on the pod tonight?
No, I think it'll be stay locked in. It should be exciting, next 7-8 days. So expect a string of good news from Maryland. So yeah, it should be an exciting time.
Yeah, make sure to like this pod where you get it, subscribe to it where you can, and as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.